Let's talk about power. Do you know her? Economic and political system where a country's trade and industry are controlled privately for profit. So these are the zones we're looking at. What is capital? Wealth, money, or assets owned by a person or organization for the use of a purpose. Money, assets. They're working together. The goal is privately owned profit, specifically wealth, and like we just said, resources. So if I'm accruing economic wealth in a system with a shared goal of profit, the more money I can get, or the more resources that I can get, the more political power that I can get. And if I can use that political power then to give myself more economic success, then I can continuously reinvest my resources into a political system that serves me. Now, if I'm a person that can never get any wealth and I can never feed this system, then I essentially will continue to lose power in this system over time while other people can multiply their power. But resources can also be pooled by groups of people and owned by an organization. That means any individual or collection of people inside of a capitalist system that includes economics and politics can use resources to leverage power at any time. So that could be a government, civil rights group, corporation, union. It could be some type of coalition, depending on the power dynamics, the value systems. In these, at any time, the value or the worth of various resources can change over time. And so you have to be aware of the political environment, the social environment, the different needs of the different people inside of the political and economic system to know what resources matter at a given time, what resources have the most value. And then once you pool those resources, you are going to spend them wisely in the right areas. You're going to use them to push and pull in the right direction. When you understand the value systems of the different people playing inside of the systems, then it gives you a better idea of what the value of your resources are. Depending on who we are, we may have a ton of resources or we may only have a little bit. And how do we know? How do we determine where our resources are valuable and where we should be spending them? It actually depends. It's going to depend on where you live and what kind of systems that you are trying to impact. But the value of your resources is going to change over time, and what is more meaningful will shift with sort of like the values of society. So if we want to determine what resources matter, we need to know what matters to who, right? So who are the groups of people with power? And of course, there are divisions within this, okay? So don't think black and white. Think about this on a scale. Think continuums. Don't think all or nothing. Think characteristics in society that can be low or that they can be high, okay? I want you to think of adaptability. Societies change every day. We get new elected officials, new laws, economic depreciation and appreciation, right? We have things outside of us. This is societal context. Things outside of us that change every single day. And so we need to be cognizant of how our resources are going to matter over time. Who has power in the system that you are working in? Who already has leverage? You need to know that. And what do they want? What are they looking for? They're already able to sort of affect other people's ideas. That gives you something to brush up against. If they have certain goals or even certain desires, just a want can be something that makes people act in this arena. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't even have to be a need. If you know what somebody else's goal is and that goal is going to hurt you, then you can use your resources to the best of your abilities to sort of pull any structure out from under that goal and make sure that you stay safe or get what you want out of the situation, whatever it is, Okay, so we have the goals and desires of the people within the system. For our discussion today, I want you to think power, people with power, and then you have the masses. These people have more say. Then we have availability or supply and demand. This matters more because people with power can affect supply and demand more so than the masses. Supply and demand affects the decisions that people make, okay? Like if you're trying to use money against me as a leverage point, but I can go get money anywhere, why would I care what you're doing with money? See what I'm saying? And then you have societal context. You have to know the world that you're participating in. If you don't know the world that you're participating in, you don't know what's valuable. Okay, so a really good example of that right now, it's going to sound kind of crazy, but right now, white people who have power, right, in America, Donald Trump's regime and the people specifically in government power that are Republicans that are using this moment for power grabs, right? There is a subset of them that are like afraid of the Great Replacement theory, okay? And basically they see whites as becoming a minority and they don't want that to happen. That gives them some level of like racial anxiety, ethnic anxiety, obviously rooted in systems of racism and supremacy. Since we know that there's a subset of people that are like afraid of essentially miscegenation, which means race mixing, they are afraid of white extinction. That makes what we choose to do with our reproduction very important to these people. In this very strange and disturbing way, that literally makes women's wombs a point of interest. It makes women's wombs a resource to these people. I know it sounds literally insane, but it is true, right? Because they want white babies. That is like some point of anxiety for them. And so that makes a womb a resource that now matters to these men in power. And so that is why you see this uptick in them trying to control wombs. So that brings me to my next point, which is that I really want you to be creative when you think about what resources are. Like, what is considered a resource? Resources are not just money. Okay, the abstract, we know that knowledge is a resource. For example, if a bunch of people thought that they were in an unjust system, then knowledge about the legal system would be incredibly important, right? Especially if they wanted to protest, because they would need to know their rights. Let's say that the societal context was one where your government tried to control history. That's going to make historians increase in value, right? Because they can share knowledge that we need. Another example, cruelty. Let's think about that. Is that a resource? Okay, I just read something about how the ruling class, some people are now calling it the predator class, the billionaire class, they process their feelings differently. The working class has more access to empathy and a different access to their emotions. And so they have less access to cruelty. Is that a concept that we can use? I want you to think about that. Epstein files were just released. There's cruelty in that. Did it affect how you behaved in your political system? Did the cruelty that you saw with Alex, Keith, these ICE shootings, Renee, are these displays of cruelty? Do they affect how you behave in the system? And do you have access to the same cruelty? I'm not asking you to be cruel, to be clear. We're exploring abstract resources, and we're going to keep going. Skills. We have so many skills that they do not have, and we have the ability to withhold them. Toilet. You ever seen a billionaire fix a toilet? I bet they can't. That's a working class thing. Let's go. I know you get it. Knowledge and skills can be used to make power, to contribute to a collective, to create resources. I mean, skills can be used to create resources. Obviously, we know we need money. If we need money, how do we get it? What skills can we use to get money? We need a fundraise. If I'm fundraising and I'm using this money, where's the money going to go? Do I need a leader? And do I need to trust him And so our trust and leadership are these resources within a society. You tell me. If I have a leader that I can trust with the money that I fundraised with my skills and my knowledge, because I want to contribute to the resource pool of a collective that matters to me. And the more people that do that, the more resourced we are, the more we can feed economic and political systems in our power, no matter how that might look. Here's another really important one. Veterans. That is a very important knowledge base, right? There are a lot of things that veterans can do that a lot of us are not prepared to do. Many of us do not even know how to enter this world, right? And so knowing these people is an extreme resource. Now, to be clear, I'm not telling anybody to be violent, but the government certainly has the resources to do such a thing. They can use cops, these different types of militias. As there's an imbalance there, right? They have access to knowledge and skills that come from people trained for war, and they are legally allowed to use them against us, and we are not legally allowed to use those against them. They have a total monopoly on that, right? And that completely changes what we have to do with our resources. You feel me? You see how all of this kind of works together? All social movements require ongoing, sustained resource mobilization for success. Political campaigns, resource mobilization. Civil rights movement, resource mobilization. This new idea that there's like this conservative movement, these right-wing, extreme right mobilizations into the mainstream, these are social movements. Every single one requires a successful mobilization of your resources. The elite already has resources. Social movements, they tend to be the underdog, right? Or they wouldn't have to be mobilizing in such a way. Or there's like a big goal that somebody has. These kind of ideas can actually still be applied to Trump as he tries to consolidate power. He is mobilizing resources. Now, I want to be clear. The elite has the power. They have already invested money in the political system in such a way that they have so much economic and political power that they can do things to affect supply and demand of our resources in a pinch that affect our ability to mobilize in an instant, withholding SNAP benefits, withholding Medicaid from Minnesota the longer that they resisted absolute rule. So when you're thinking about how to mobilize your resources or how to collectively mobilize your resources to gain power within any system, it really serves you to remember that in retaliation, the ruling elite, the predator class, the Epstein class, whatever you're working with, honestly, it depends on how corrupt they are. If your politicians are good politicians, hopefully they will not mobilize resources against you. The more corrupt your system, the more corrupt your politicians, the more likely you're going to get into situations where they're actively mobilizing your resources and making it harder for you to act, whether by yourself or with a collection of your friends, to get whatever you might need. Let's consider those things that are more obvious resources and those that are more abstract. And remember, we want to think economically and politically, because in the system that we live in, that is what wields power, because the goal is profit. And that creates a cycle of compounding power that you can use for yourself. Right? We'll start politically, right? We can vote, we can technically lobby, we can campaign for the politicians we believe in, fundraise, we can run for office, donate money, we can join unions, got knowledge, skills, trust, or loyalty, which we could use for collectivism. We have to trust the people that we're working with. What about disagreement? Baiting, okay? And we've got people in power that will use things to make us fight, right? They'll use race, hot button issues, gay stuff, abortion, race. These are things that they make us, that they can fuel us to disagree about. So how would it help the ruling class to foster disagreement? Is disagreement a tool? This goes back to the same thing about cruelty. Privilege, high importance. If you are white, we need to see you at the front of the line, babe. It would also help if you're pretty. And status is also a good thing. Influence. How much do you have? Where can you use it? Which brings us to apps, attention, and the algo. Reclaim your attention. If it's not something that would help Trump, assume that it's suppressed. If you want other eyes on it, you better share it. We cannot leave it to the tech bros. Pushing what you want through the algorithm is one of the most helpful things that you can do. Capitalism's favorite exploit, your labor. We know that they use information, right? We've got misinformation, propaganda. Oh, what about this one? Nationalism. These are abstract concepts. They get used in the social, economic, political environment that creates the context that our resources exist in. We have to be able to use all of these things at the same time, hopefully in groups. There is a theory about this. It is called resource mobilization theory. I don't know the whole theory. I've just barely briefly looked at it if you want to explore that further. The ongoing and organized execution of strategic leverage of pooled resources in a capitalist society can help you win a social movement. And you need all of those things. We need tons of knowledge, right? We need medical knowledge, veteran knowledge. We need teachers because we're flooded constantly with misinformation. And so having all of this, what is this? It's the thing that we are supposed to hate. Wait for it, wait for it. It's DEI. The diversity of our skills used together inclusively is the only thing that is going to help us mobilize our resources in a way that can impact this system. This is it. So no wonder this is under attack. Am I right? There's resources plus DEI because we cannot do it alone, okay? Because the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. That's all I got. Okay, I'm tired.